So welcome everyone, welcome to the United Nations dialogue session. So today's topic will be the life underwater. I appreciate the support of Professor Barış Salihoğlu. So he will introduce himself later on, but I would like to also thank all of our contributors, Sinan, Fasih, Ezgi, Mahnin, Ribal, and Malik and Fasih. I already said Fasih, yeah. So before we start, actually, I would like to introduce myself first, and I'll ask you to introduce yourself very shortly and how we are related to the life underwater. I'm an assistant professor at the Electrical and Electronics Engineering Department at Abdullah Gül University. My research basically involves optics and photonics, and my involvement with the life underwater basically is through our studies that we try to detect the microplastics that are already present in marine sources or water sources. Sinan, maybe you would like to introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Hocam. My name is Sinan. I'm a both TA in the Electrical Electronics Engineering Department and also doing my PhD. Talha Hoca is my advisor, one of my advisors. So I'm just trying to create a sensor, an optical sensor, which detects shape, not exactly shape, we assume the shape, but the concentration of the microplastics and liquid waters in addition to their material type, which we don't have in literature yet, and also how can I say that by looking at scattering patterns on those samples, we are just trying to distinguish the material type, which would provide us some opportunity in terms of detection, maybe the poison level or the concentration or the size of the materials in the samples. So I'm just close to give my first progress report in a week, and that's all from my side for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinan. Fasih, would you like to introduce yourself?
Right, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fasih Munir Malik, fourth year mechanical engineering student at Abdullah Gül University. I am from Pakistan. I think I'm not directly related to life underwater, or I do not have much experience about it. What caught my attention was I was working with Professor Kutai from the electrical department in a project where we were looking at the pollution, measuring some particulate matter and dust particles. And then when this came up, I was just wondering about the pollution underwater and the life underwater. So I thought it would be interesting to join.
Thank you, Fasih. Ezgi Hocam, would you like to introduce briefly?
Yes, thank you, Talha Hocam. Hello, everybody. I'm a specialist in the Middle East Technical University Institute of Marine Sciences. I am actively working with European projects, and I am helping development research strategy in our university and institution. I am directly dealing with helping the blue growth related project of our institute, and I can say our work here is really related to sustainable development goals, and here is nice to see different background students, experts. It will be a really nice collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mahnin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Adam. I'm Mahnin Sohail from Pakistan. It's my first year here. I'm currently studying economics. It's a new department here. And I've been taking part in the UN dialogues. And I believe that small contributions really go a long way, even with the discussions. And for life under the water specifically, 70% of the earth is water. So it really drew my interest to it. So I'm really excited for the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mahnin. In the meantime, Ribal, maybe you may want to introduce yourself as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Rabah Zahra and I'm currently studying at Abdullah Gül University. I'm enrolled in the first semester Department of Business Administration. Formerly, I worked as a research intern at South Asian Strategic Stability Institute, and I'm delighted to be a part of this conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ais, would you like to add anything or shall we start?
Yes, I would just like to say everything. I'm sorry for the disturbance. Yeah, I'm Syed Faisali. I'm from Pakistan, fourth year mechanical engineering student, and I've been very delighted to be the part of this conversation, and I hope to learn new things on this topic.
Thank you.
We can proceed from here.
Thank you. Barış Hocam, the stage is yours.
Okay, can you hear me and can you all see my screen? Talha Hocam?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Hocam.
Yes, Hocam, we can see and hear you.
Okay, excellent. First of all, I would like to thank the presenters and Abdullah Gül University for this opportunity. I'm very happy to be here with you. And I would like to thank Talha Erdem Hocam for inviting me. And today, as Talha Hoca has already introduced, I will be talking about the SDG 14, but I will also focus on how we link it with the other sustainable development goals. So at the beginning, if you allow me, I would like to make an introduction about marine sciences, what it is and what we deal with. And then I will very briefly introduce my organization, Middle East University Institute of Marine Sciences. Then I will switch to sustainable development goals, and the main focus of today's discussion will be on SDG 14, life below water. And I will also show you how we link this with other sea basin strategies. And at the end, I will give you some examples on how we focus on different SDGs and especially different targets. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. Actually, I am a graduate of natural gas and petroleum engineering from Middle East Technical University. Afterwards, I switched to oceanography and I did my master's in physical oceanography here in my current institute. And afterwards, I was in the US for a PhD on coastal physical oceanography. And I focused during my PhD, I focused on the Pacific Ocean and how climate affects the ecosystem there. And also as a side project, I was in Antarctic, and the picture you see there was one of the expeditions from Antarctica. And as a postdoctoral researcher, I was in CNRS, France, this time working in the Atlantic Ocean. And afterwards, I joined my current institute, Institute of Marine Sciences, and since then, I'm a faculty here, and at the moment, since 4 years now, I'm the director of the institute. Okay, our institute, sorry, this is, I have already told you, and our institute focuses on oceanography, and that's my main field as well. But what exactly is marine sciences and oceanography? Oceanography, in a broad understanding, is the study of the physical, chemical, and biological features of the ocean. So it includes ocean's ancient history, its current condition, and its future. And it's a branch of science that really merges experimental work, observational work, and modeling work. And oceans are, understanding the oceans are very critical in order to understand the climate system, the water cycle, and the core carbon cycle. Oceans sit at the heart of these cycles, and the diversity in the ocean is the main element that supports life on Earth. And one of our friends Mahnin, if I believe, she said that 70% of Earth is covered by the oceans, which is very true. And the oceans transport heat from the equator to the poles. So without the oceans, there would be no life as we understand today. And another important aspect of the oceans are most of the oxygen that we breathe, it comes from the oceans. It's around 60 to 70% that the oxygen in the oceans are coming from the oceans. And we have only discovered 5% of the oceans until now. And when it comes to medicine, there's really a lot of opportunities for innovation to better understand the oceans and use the oceans for medical purposes, and also to support the food. And the oceans provide much more food than just seafood. I mean, we can also use algae from the oceans, and also we can use some of the deep organisms from the oceans. And without the ocean's capacity to store carbon dioxide, the Earth would be much, much warmer today. Oceans are the main instruments that really buffer the effects of the climate change and the global warming. Okay, where is our institute? Middle East Technical University is located in Ankara, as you may all know. However, our institute is the second campus in Turkey, and it's located at the Mediterranean coast in close to the city of Mersin. And okay, this is a tiny movie that I would like to show you while I'm telling you about the institute. Our institute has three main departments. What you see here is our ship, Bilim. Bilim is actually now is in the Black Sea. So we are the main institute that carries out research in the national seas. So we study the Mediterranean, Aegean, Marmara, and the Black Sea. And we study from the physics of the sea, how the climate interacts with the physical dynamics of the sea, its circulation, its water masses, and how the ecosystem is impacted by climate. For example, that's my topic of study, how marine ecosystems are being influenced by the climate change. And also we study the chemistry of the oceans, pollution in the seas, and as well as geology and geophysics of the sea, how the bottom of the sea is designed in terms of tectonics dynamics, but also the ecosystem there. And we study the whole water column, not just the surface of the ocean. We also study the deep ocean. Our institute is the main institute that really studies the open ocean rather than just the coasts. Okay, and there are many answers, there are many challenges related with the oceans, and we focus on understanding the oceans in a holistic way. So to understand the oceans from physics up to its biology, up to, I mean, I can say from viruses to whales, so to speak. And sustainable use of the oceans are one of our priorities today, which we will be mainly discussing of. And how new nutrients or protein sources can be obtained from the oceans, and how different marine organisms help us with new medicines, for example, and even how we can use the organisms from the oceans for the treatment of COVID-19 are topics that oceanography focuses on. And very recently, we also focus on the socioeconomic aspects, how the seas and oceans support the society, but also the economy. Okay, the new vision of our institute is can be summarized under three pillars: discover, apply, and share. Scientific excellence is our main priority, but also using this science to provide solutions for sustainable growth is our other priority, and also sharing our knowledge and experience through training and social responsibility projects are our third pillar and third priority in the institute. Our institute is a graduate school, so we have master students and PhD students only in this institute, but in reality, we act as a research center. So we have carried out many international projects. I mean, METU is it is the most successful university in Turkey in terms of international projects. And our institute in METU by far is the most successful institute. So it shows you where our institute is positioned. Also in terms of scientific publications, it's a very successful institute, and by today we have almost 170 graduate students. Okay, let's talk about our main topic. How do we relate our research to sustainable development goals, especially to the goal 14? Maybe you already know, but I would like to give you a summary on what are the main targets of SDG 14, life below water. Afterwards, I will also talk about the cross-cutting targets between the other sustainable development goals. The first one is marine pollution. And the second one is protecting and restoring the ecosystems. And especially biodiversity loss nowadays is one of the crises that our planet is facing. I mean, we all talk about global warming as a crisis, but biodiversity is the other crisis that we need to deal with. And the details of the sustainable development goals are not there. So it's up to us to develop the details and how we focus on these targets. Ocean acidification, and I will talk about this later, but one of the main impacts of the increase in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is the increase in the acidity of the oceans. And this has a huge impact in the oceans. Maybe this is even more critical than the temperature increase for the oceans. And fishing is carried out in an unsustainable way in all the oceans, but especially in closed seas like the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. This is even more severe. And conserving coasts and marine areas and developing strategies and plans for these areas is very critical. And ending overfishing and support mechanisms that causes this overfishing is very critical to conserve the ecosystem in the ocean. And we are seeking ways to increase the economic benefits from the ocean by using the marine sources in a sustainable way. We also call this strategy the blue growth strategy, which I will be talking shortly. And increasing scientific knowledge, research, technology for the ocean health is another area that we focus on. And supporting the small-scale fisheries is also important to fight this overfishing. And implementing and enforcing international sea law is another aspect here. Okay. So as you see here, SDG 14 touches all the other sustainable goals, and I will give you some examples. So when you study the oceans and the seas, you don't really only deal with SDG 14 or some of its targets. So the presentation that I'm making today, maybe you will realize in the future that I will be touching many more targets than any other field really that works on the SDGs. Okay, what does marine sciences focus on in terms of other SDG targets. I mean, we have gone over SDG 14, but I tried to summarize for you some examples. For example, from SDG 1, no poverty, building a resilient environment and a resilient economy is also the target of the research that marine sciences carry out. Especially a resilient ecosystem that supports a resilient economy is one of the main objectives of our ongoing research. And oceans serve the society in a different way than the land, because even underdeveloped countries has equal access to the sea. So, for example, when we talk about the Mediterranean or the Black Sea, there are EU countries that are bordering these seas, but there are also underdeveloped countries from Africa or from the non-EU countries of the Black Sea, and they have equal access. Sometimes they have even more access to these seas. So seas serve these societies in a more fair way than other opportunities. And a polluted sea means an unhealthy sea, means an unhealthy society as well. So under good health and well-being, our research supports these targets as well. And in terms of quality of education, marine sciences gives the mean to support people from underdeveloped countries, and we work on providing blue skills related with the oceans to these societies. And in terms of gender equality, seas support the woman much more than many other fields, and give them access to especially socioeconomic status that is closer to men in a more favorable way than other sectors that are related with land. And seas are the main, one of the main instruments that supports the clean water, because sea is in the heart of the water cycle. And affordable and clean energy, blue growth supports especially renewable energy from the seas. This can be wind, this can be wave, or this can be some biological energy sources from the sea. And innovation, industrial innovation and infrastructure. The sea-based infrastructure supports both the economy, sustainable economy, but also research. And infrastructure in the seas are very, very critical today that we focus on. And I have mentioned to you how seas can support reducing inequalities, and protecting the world's culture and heritage, especially underwater heritage, is one of our priorities. And Talha Hocam and Fatih Bey has already mentioned about plastics, microplastics, and these are main problems in the sea. So we focus on how we address this pollution in the sea, and also how we are going to detect and reduce plastic pollution. And under climate actions, all the targets are addressed, are related with the seas, and especially integrating climate change measures into policies and planning is one of our main priorities. And life on land is highly coupled with life in the sea, and the sea ecosystem and the land ecosystems are highly coupled to each other. Without understanding one, you cannot really understand the other one. And the policies that we developed for the seas, we developed them all together as the nations, because seas, like land, you cannot put borders in the sea and separate the sea, because the seas are highly connected, and something happening in one coast of one country can affect the other country. So we all need to work together and we all need to function together. For example, this recent COVID pandemic was a very good example on this. We all are in the same boat and we all need to move forward together. Okay, and how did we come to the Sustainable Development Goals? So at the beginning, there was the Blue Growth strategy, which focuses on also using the seeds in a sustainable manner. And then there was a Green Growth strategy, and the Sustainable Development Goals are actually these three strategies are the main strategies that we focus on, and they all complement each other. And there are strategic documents for each sea. So I have been talking mostly about Mediterranean and the Black Sea because that's what we work on. But all the other seas has strategies that support sustainable economies. And there are specific documents for each sea, and all these documents support SDGs as well. And one of the latest documents is on the Black Sea, a strategic research and innovation agenda, and this was developed by us. And when we look at the BlueMed, which is an initiative developing strategies for blue growth in the Mediterranean, on the right you see the priorities, and you can immediately recognize that these priorities really overlap with, especially with SDG 14, but also with SDG 12 and 17, like sustainable fisheries, aquaculture, biotech, climate change, ecosystems, cultural heritage are some of the examples, and energy, offshore platforms, for example. And in the Black Sea, our main focus is the Black Sea. So I focus on this, giving you some examples. We support UN SDGs. We support the EU Green Deal. I suggest you to have a look at these strategies if you haven't. But also UN Ocean Decade may be quite critical for you, because between 2020 and 2030 is the ocean decade, and UN SDGs will be part of this and will support this. And EU today has one mission on the oceans. EU has 5 missions. For example, cancer and space are the missions, but mission starfish is also one mission. So oceans are placed in a very critical position here. Okay, I will go into details how we support SDGs during the question and answer session, but I would like to give you some examples from our projects, just a few last slides, and then then we can continue in a more interactive way. The Black Sea Connect project is a Horizon 2020 project that we coordinate, and actually this was one of the first coordinations that Turkey got in this field. And here we focus on developing the strategies on maritime research and innovation in the Black Sea. And while doing so, we address many of the targets of SDG 14, like reducing marine pollution, protecting and restoring ecosystems, sustainable fisheries, conserving coastal and marine areas, and addressing overfishing and sustainable use of marine resources, as well as increase of research and innovation. And the other project that we coordinate, actually this was announced just last week, and this is the first time I'm talking about this. As you see here, this one coordinatorship is ours, so it's really a great honor for us. So this is a 9 million euro project. Its name is Bridge, and this is a consortium of 33 partners from 15 countries. And here, as you see in the right, we focus on how different stressors, pressures affect the Black Sea ecosystem. Some of these stressors you will recognize, like warming, deoxygenation, acidification, overfishing, invasive species, eutrophication, pollution, and sea land-based activities. And you see how these all are related with different targets of SDG 14. And while addressing these multi-stressors within this project, what we will do is that we will focus on ecosystem services, how ecosystem services are affected by these stressors. By the way, most of these stressors are human-induced. So we exert these pressures in the sea. And while addressing this, we will also focus on how society is affected by this, and we will develop policy options, and we will focus on the resilience of the habitats of the sea. The other few projects that we work on, we work from the deep sea to the poles, as I said, and we have two projects focusing on Antarctic. One of them focuses on Antarctic food webs, and the other one focuses on how different environmental effects affect the Antarctic krill, which is the biggest biomass on Earth. And we work in the deep sea, and our researchers go and dive actually to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and we try to understand how the deep sea functions. Another project that I lead is understanding how the mesopelagic zone of the ocean can support food from the ocean. Today, we only use fish from the surface ocean, but there are some plants using fish or other organisms from the deep ocean. But we try to understand, if we start harvesting deep sea, how it will affect the ecosystem. We need to better understand the ecosystem before starting really harnessing it or harvesting it. Otherwise, you harm the ecosystem. And there's another project that we work on, and we work on the Sepsian fish. This fish, they came through the Suez Canal and now invading all our seas. And we have a project on ocean acidification as well, which is one of the main targets of SDG 14. And lately, also Talha Hocam and Fatih Beyz are working on this. We work on microplastics and how microplastics are distributed in the sea, but also how it affects the organisms when it is ingested by different organisms, not only by fish, but also these microplastics are utilized by microscopic organisms like phytoplankton and zooplankton in the seas. And I would like to end my talk here. I hope it wasn't too long, but I tried to cover everything in 20-25 minutes. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Barış. I just can say, wow, you're dealing with a lot of different things, and I hope one day we can have more details on each topic as well. So due to time constraints, actually, we just kind of saw each topic, superficially, but I would like to hear the details someday as well.
Yes,
I really
sure.
like it. Thank you, Hocam. First of all, arkadaşlar, would you like to ask anything to Barış Hocam, or we can start the discussions afterwards?
Actually,
any
just
questions?
before starting to that discussions, I just want to ask something about Barış Hocam's view on a topic. Hocam, I think it was a year ago that I was in a training in Brussels. There were some people from European Union that they just came and give some presentations, and one of those people said that in his presentations, Turkey is the second country in the Mediterranean after Egypt who put the most pollution in terms of the tons, the unit. But I think it's also important which type of pollution that we are releasing those resources. I mean, if we are putting, let's say, 10 tons, but another country is just giving 1 ton, but what about the material type? Do you think that it's also important, or if it's a plastic, or it also differs from type to type, or not only in terms of the plastic, but also the other types of marine litter? What do you think on that topic? Thank you.
Yes, excellent question, actually. I mean, if we were carrying out this discussion, let's say 20 years ago, one of the most critical pollution type I would call was agriculture-based nutrients from land. For example, when you look at the Mediterranean coast, especially the eastern coast of Turkey, the water quality is very, very poor. I mean, you go to the Aegean, you see that it's clear, transparent water, but you come to the Mediterranean coast of Turkey, the water quality is very poor. And one of the main reasons of this, the agriculture-based pollution coming from the rivers. So these are nutrients, for example, like nitrate, phosphate, and these pollute the ocean, and these causes growth in phytoplankton. So the ocean turns into a green color and the oxygen levels start to decrease. So this is one main cause. Agriculture is one main cause of pollution, but industry as well, heavy metals, for example. Again, heavy metals are one level of pollution that we deal with, and it is very critical. Unfortunately, recently plastics are polluting our seas and really harming both the sea bottom, the life at the sea bottom, but also the sea column. I mean, after a while, these plastics start degrading, and you know better, and they form these microplastics, and they're everywhere. But your question is very critical because we started focusing, at least the community started focusing only on plastics, as if that's the only pollution that goes into the seas, but it is not. What we call eutrophication caused by these nutrients is another level of pollution, and this is very high at the Turkish coast. It is true. I don't know how exactly it compares with the rest of the Mediterranean, but it is critical, especially in the eastern part of the Mediterranean.
Thank you, Sinan and Barış Hocam. Do you have any other questions? Ribal, Mahnin, Fasi, Syed?
I actually had a question, but I would really like to take it when we openly discuss because it's going to be really related to that. So,
okay. Maybe I should also ask you guys how your opinion or how the situation in Asia is. So we heard a lot of things in the news and also from the Barış Hoca's talk about Mediterranean, Black Sea, or oceans, but for instance, I have been to Thailand, so the is terrible there. So I can say that they were much more polluted than the ones in Turkey. So I wonder how the situation, for instance, in your country is, and how future projections, how do you see the future in terms of the pollution and the situation of the life in underwater?
If you allow me to speak, I would initiate this conversation. I'm from Pakistan, and unfortunately, Pakistan, the situation for oceans and seas, rivers, it's not better than anything. All the oceans in the world, we are all in the same position. Some are worse, some are a little better. But due to this pandemic and due to the current situations, the situation has worsened, especially from the pollution. It's kind of really contrary to the fact that though we are confined in our homes and we're not going out, and technically the pollution should reduce, but because of not proper disposal of the masks and gloves and all the things, the pollution is increasing. And it really, in Pakistan is a developing country, and we majorly focus on our economic growth. And all these, unfortunately, all of these things are actually kept second priority. And because of that, we're not being able to focus more on the UN goals and sustainable goals. And because of that, we're already struggling. And because of the pandemic, the things are worsened. But as the Barış mentioned about the blue growth, and I think blue growth due to pandemic would really, really encourage blue recovery. So, and I would really like to talk about that later in this discussion with details. And I have, researched a lot of things and I really came up with interesting ideas. So I would really like to share with the conversation about the strategies. Right.
Okay, thank you, Mahnin. Thank you for nice comments. Actually, from the Turkish point of view, I actually agree with Mahnin that after the pandemic, I have started to see the masks all around the place. And I can see that people are using more chemicals in their homes. And I definitely think that those heavily contribute to the pollution of the water. So do you see, Barış Hocam, any indication of it directly in your research nowadays?
Yes, actually, effect of COVID-19 is, we have defined the effect of COVID-19 on the ecosystem, marine ecosystem. We have defined it as one of our priorities in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. And we are collecting data and information from the coastal countries. It's not immediate. I mean, it's very hard to tell you immediately, okay, it was worse or it was better. Definitely, plastic pollution has increased, and we can immediately see that, as you have mentioned, these gloves, masks, and other what do you call it? These what the doctors and the healthcare people.
Personal protective equipment.
Personal protective equipment. Okay, and I mean, the single-use plastics is increasing. Because of hygienic reasons, people started using them more and more, even for eating. Like most of the restaurants are doing takeouts and they're serving everything with plastic, as you know. And that's the negative side. That's the negative side. But in terms of how the industry has affected the ecosystem, or how the direct effects by people, negative effects of tourism, for example. We have reports from some countries that these negative effects has been reduced because there was less pressure, less human pressure at the coast, especially on the mammals. And somehow it also affected fisheries in certain countries in a positive way. In some countries, it affected them in a negative way. But in some countries, obviously, the demand on fisheries, maybe because people couldn't go to the restaurants, and in some cultures, people prefer to eat fish in the restaurants rather than at their homes. Again, the fisheries pressure has been decreased in some countries, but it has been increased in some others. Yeah, these are the immediate results that we have so far, but unfortunately, it's really sad to see that plastic pollution is increasing. Okay, it's understandable that people's priority were their own health and to protect them from COVID, but we also need to think about this ecosystem, and we need to find other ways of maybe, I mean, these masks shouldn't be plastic-based, but they can be more natural products that they can degrade in the oceans. And yeah, we need to convert the industry. We need to convert the sectors and start using alternatives rather than plastic. Especially single-use plastic is really, really harming the oceans. Because even if you put the plastic in recycling, most of them end up in the oceans, unfortunately. So it's best not to use the plastic, to minimize the use of the plastic.
Okay, Barış Hocam, thank you. Actually, I was planning to see, but this recycling issue, I believe, is also very important. For instance, when I was in the UK, I lived there for 2 years. I heard, or I read in the news, in the newspaper several times that the plastics in the UK are sent to Turkey for recycling, but it was literally questionable whether those plastics are really recycled or not. So I'm sure that those significantly contribute to pollution, I believe. I mean, of course, the land is being polluted, but I think whether they're recycled or not, they are contributing to the pollution of the water as well. And what I literally don't like is that the UK sends those plastics to Turkey, and they are protecting their own waters, but we ourselves then start to pollute ourselves by accepting those plastics, those recycled items or recyclable items that we in practice do not recycle maybe. So did you see, Barış Hocam, any effect of those kind of things? Or arkadaşlar, would you like to make comments on it? Maybe Barış Hocam, you start first talking about this.
I mean, yes, Talha Hocam, absolutely true. I mean, we need to stop using especially single-use plastics and forget about importing them. Because
I think China stopped, right, Hocam?
I'm not sure about. I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge on that. What China did. Because whatever goes to landfills, at the end they end up in the oceans. And as you say, I mean, why do we kill our own ecosystems? For what benefit? I mean, the value of the ecosystems is much higher than any monetary value that we get immediately by importing these plastics. So that should absolutely stop, and moreover, we should really start not using single-use plastics, and then gradually switch to ecological plastics or natural-based plastics. And yes, we see the effect of whatever goes into landfills. They come through our rivers to our seas, or especially like big storms are a big effect. They wash everything to the rivers or to the seas, and so you don't need to go and dump things, plastics into the rivers or to the seas directly. But with big floods, these are all at the end carried to the seas, and that gives a huge harm. I mean, I'm sure none of us are very happy going to the beach nowadays because it's quite disappointing to see all this plastic. I mean, we swim in plastic nowadays.
Hocam, I believe Mahnin and Fasih both are asking for a word. Maybe Mahnin, you start first.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I agree with what Barış Hocam just said about dumping. Right now, in the crisis, we're just in the middle of finding vaccine and not finding vaccine and having its side effects. I think in this middle, if we opt for alternatives, for masks and for gloves, it's really going to divert the attention of the real cause. And if we see the practicality right now, it's going to be really hard. So what I agree and what he said just is that instead of, we can keep it as a second priority, but instead of diverging our focus and then spending a lot of money while the economy is still struggling, we can more focus on educating people and spreading awareness about the importance of dumping these things properly. Because no matter what we do, it's not that if we switch to alternatives and if we don't dump that properly, our waste is going to reduce. So in the meanwhile, in all the process, if we switch to alternatives, the damage is going to still be there. So the most effective thing right now would be to educate and spread awareness. And right now, I'll be just honest, before I even entered this this conversation and researched about it, I had doubts, and I had doubts to actually see how harmful each individual's act can be. So, and it's really hard to even believe that, okay, if I'm going to do something, it's going to, as an individual, it's not going to affect the entire earth and the entire universe. But I think it is. And I think that factor, that whatever you do makes a difference, is going to be something that's going to actually make a difference in the long term. And even if we switch to different things, even if I think it's kind of escaping from the reality, and it's kind of escaping from the improvement. The improvement belongs in the human, and if we start improving ourselves and practically applying the knowledge that we learn in schools and colleges, I think it's going to be beneficial.
Absolutely agree, Mahi. I mean, I believe the education is the essence of everything. I mean, if you would like to develop in any area, we would like to educate ourselves in terms, the whole world needs education in that sense. Now I'd like to give the word to Fasi, if he likes.
Yes, Hojam, I would like to add to Mahani. I think she's very right. I think we humans, we don't really see the long-term effects, or let's say, we don't see the wider picture over here. When we talk about pollution, we say, okay, we should not dump plastics. But we've never seen that, okay, even though the plastics are going to landfills, and normally advertisements show that, okay, we have places that will be filled with garbage and stuff. We don't actually see, or we don't actually understand that eventually they'll end up at a different place, even though we do not dump them there, like Paris Hoja said. But if floods come, and by rainwater and in many different ways, they will eventually end up disturbing the ecosystem. I think awareness in this regard is what we can do for now, because we are in the middle of we're in the middle of a pandemic. I think the governments nations have previously taken actions on reducing plastic. I remember from Turkey, I think 2 years back, if you would go shopping, you could have as many plastic bags as you want. But this time, you go to shopping and you'll have to pay for them. And yet you'll get encouraged to buy those, let's say, other bags, I think paper bags and stuff instead of plastics. So I think what we could do is awareness, and then maybe the government should take actions, because of course at individual level we can work on this, but then we keep questioning ourselves that one small tiny act, is it going to have an impact?
Okay, thank you. Sure, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ribal and Faiz. Very important points. I would like to share my screen briefly with you, because I have some good news, like what both Ribal and Faiz said. We need to educate the people, and we can start doing that with the young people, of course. What we did, for example, for the Black Sea, is that we have created a young ambassadors program. And what you see here in the right, we have 18 young ambassadors initially, but the number is increasing from all the Black Sea countries. And the program was launched by the Commissioner of Research and Innovation of the EU. And our young ambassadors had the chance to tell her what they expect from the governors. But also we educate our young ambassadors on plastic, for example. So they go and they really they develop narratives in terms of how plastic pollution is affecting our seas and the oceans. Not always in a negative manner, but also how things will be if we stop doing this. And also the same group of ambassadors exist for the Mediterranean, and now in the Atlantic as well. And we are also developing new awareness programs and education programs in all these countries. So we are looking for young and motivated people that will be the ambassadors of our seas and help us protect these seas and help us with a sustainable economy towards these seas. How we use, okay, we all use our seas, right? I mean, even if you say that, okay, you don't eat fish, you don't pollute, but still you wear clothes and they come with the sea, with the ships, with transportation, and all these have stresses on these seas. So since we are using these seas, we need to use them in an ecologically sustainable manner, not only economically, but also ecologically sustainable manner. But the messages that you have given here is, I really like them. Yes, we definitely need to educate people, and education is one of our main pillars also in the Black Sea. We have 4 pillars that we give priority to. Actually, that was one of my, how do you say, overheads that I wanted to show you, but we can continue and I can show you later on.
Thank you, Hocam. Now, Sinan and Sayed would like to have a word as well, but I first would like to ask Sayed to go ahead, then we'll move to Sinan, then Mahnin wanted to ask something as well.
Thank you so much, Barish Hocam, and thank you so much for the virtuous and intellectual insights about the seas. To begin my question, I would like to state the quote that you referred and you stated, and I quote, "A healthy sea results in a healthy society." And this brings to my question that your institute, METU, and the worldwide, like UN and other organizations, they're working hard in defining the goals, like the goals that you define, 14 goals, the PU goals, and the roadmap that you're providing. But the main question that I have is that how effectively it is being taken by the governments and how effectively they make their position in the legislative councils.
Maybe I can add another point to it. I was
Sure.
planning to ask it. When I check the news and read some stuff or check the literature, I either see European universities working on it and some of the American universities working on it. And I wonder how the situation in Africa is, how South America is, how in Far East Asia or Middle East Asia is. Is it just, you know, do only the countries that have enough money do research on it, or do we just don't hear about it? Barış Hocam.
Okay, again, very good 2 questions. To start, I would like to start with the first question, and how do policymakers and governors and take us into account, and how these goes into legislations. This is our strategy. So what we did is that we started with a vision paper, both in the Black Sea and in the Mediterranean. And what we did here, we listed the major challenges for these seas, and also the major priorities for these seas. And what we did, we brought researchers from each country together, and we made them work together and develop an agenda. And we called these agendas strategic research and innovation agendas. While doing so, our main success was to bring all the countries and all the researchers together. And then we presented these in different conferences and even in high-level events. And we turned them into ministerial declarations. For example, one of them was presented in Burgas, and the ministers of all countries supported them. And afterwards, we turned them into agendas, general agendas for the sea basin, for the Black Sea. But okay, you can say that some countries in the Black Sea can benefit more from this, but some cannot, right? So what we did is that for each country, we have redesigned these agendas. So we fit them to their priorities. And we supported each country to integrate them to the strategies in their countries. And I can give an example, for example, from Turkey. In Turkey, we have the development plans of the government. So we presented these to these ministries, and they took these into account. Or at more local level, one of our friends said that they worked in I think it was Rival, who worked in the Aegean agency. So we presented them to these local agencies as well. But when you target them, you need to give them something at the regional level, a priority at the regional level. For example, sustainable energy from the sea may not be a priority at the regional level, but fisheries can be, or tourism can be. So you need to adapt yourself to them. So this was our strategy. And in terms of some countries that were poorer, that's what we did. Working with Georgia, they don't have much sectors from the sea, but they had certain sectors functioning. So what we did, we developed strategies for them, and we developed strategies for what can emerge from the sea. And at the end, if you do not only criticize, but if you show people new means of how they can and their society can benefit from the sea, it works at the end. Because they see that if they take an action in a certain direction, it will be beneficial for the society and for the economy as well. So that was our strategy. And here what you see in the Black Sea, we have 4 pillars, 4 priorities. First one is the knowledge. Second one is the blue economy. So as I mentioned here, we targeted both the current sectors, like fisheries, transport, tourism, but also the new sectors, energy, aquaculture, biotech. And the 4th pillar is on ocean engaged citizens, learning and training for new marine and maritime jobs, and engaging science and policy dialogue. This is also important to respond to Faiz's question. And education in the Black Sea, because most of the countries are poor there, was a main pillar. For example, in the Atlantic, education is not a main pillar in their strategy. So this is our strategy, how we tackle these challenges. But the challenges are there. I mean, they are, of course, not, we are not even near to fully solve them. But we have a strategy and we are attacking these challenges that you have raised.
What about the rest of the world, Hocam, especially Asia and Africa? How are their situation, I mean, in terms of policy making, education, research?
Yes, yes. As the economic situation of the country weakens, how these priorities are integrated into their policies also weaken. It's a truth. But we also see some very good examples from some Asian islands, for example, on blue growth. I mean, there are some poor societies there, but they develop very good strategies and very good plans to use the seas in a sustainable manner, and it works. So it's not only, not everything is about how strong you are in terms of economically, but it's about how you develop these strategies and how legislations support you. So in Africa, especially Northern African countries, they work closely with their European colleagues, and these strategies are being integrated in their policies. So, I mean, it's not that bad, but when it comes to applying them in real life, I think we need to work more on that, and there the young generation comes into play, I guess. They need to exert this pressure on their policymakers or lawmakers or their politicians, and because at the end, politicians, they take action if there's a demand from the society, and that's critical, I believe.
Thank you, Hocam. I believe Mahnin asked a word. Then Fasih, do you have also a comment later on? Will you have? Because we are getting...
Hocam, we'll wait for Mahnin and then maybe...
Before I start,
okay, Mahnin.
Sure that is the background noise. Am I clear? Because there's azan going on, so just want to make sure if I'm clear.
Yeah, you are clear.
Okay. Hocam, as I was going through your presentation that you're representing, you said that one of the focus were economic development for the sustainability of the oceans. So here, when I nailed down to the point that for the blue recovery, because of the blue growth, we need to rethink, the government needs to rethink the subsidies they're providing to the fisheries, because they're providing them so many facilities, which is good to some extent, but over exploitation of the facilities that are being provided to the people who are fishing, it is causing it. It does provide them ease, but it's also causing a lot of like big nets, which are causing the which are causing them to catch the fishes that they don't require. So if we look onto this is the thing that I found on the UN website, and I really wanted to ask, because this thing works in a categorical cycle, which means that if the subsidies we provide to fish, the people who fish, the who catch the fishes, if that is reduced, that means that not only the overexploitation would reduce, but the total output of the fishes that are being caught will be reduced too. So instead that this might help the economy, how is this is gonna help the ocean, but it's gonna again cause the economy problem, because the economic growth would be reduced. So I wanted to ask you that when you come across these policies, how do you derive a solution out of these that makes it the most suitable ones, because there are so many things that collide with it, so many conflicts with each policy that we adopt. So how do you finally nail down to a policy? What are the things that you prioritize? What are the things that you let them slide when you finally adopt a policy, or when you finally propose a policy?
Yes, I mean, as you say, subsidies are one of the main reasons of unsustainable fisheries, because if fishermen did not get these subsidies, they wouldn't be going out to fish, because it's not profitable. Or when it goes below a certain level, they would stop going out for fish. But okay, if you don't support them, then people suffer, right? So, so it's a loop there, as you say. But I still think subsidies should stop. But the way, I mean, if you are going to support these people, you don't have to support them to go fish, right? I mean, if they can't fish enough, let them stop there, but support them to maintain a living. I mean, not to go and fish even more, which is below its sustainable levels, or the ecosystems has collapsed and you are still exerting more pressure on it. But according to our research, the only way of protecting these ecosystems and maintaining fisheries is to develop protected areas. I mean, as long as there is fisheries, it's very hard to have sustainable fisheries. So the best is to have certain areas in the ocean completely protected, or in the sea, completely protect them. But that other areas open to fisheries. And then those fishermen will fish more in those areas, because fish will have some certain areas to reproduce and to grow more. And then they will migrate to these other areas where fishermen can fish more. Because fishing more doesn't mean more fish. If you fish less, then you will have more fish and you will have more better profits. But this is very hard to regulate at the end. So I think, at least today, the main solution is to have these protected areas. And to have these protected areas, what we need is planning. Like we plan the land, we need to plan the seas. And this is called marine spatial planning. It is one of the targets of the SDGs as well, by the way. So we need to plan where each sector will function, where the energy sector will function in the sea, where the fisheries, where the tourism, where the transportation, where the aquaculture sector will function. If we manage that, I think that will be the solution to all these problems. ecosystems, and then the fishermen will suffer less as well.
All right.
Thank you, Hocam. Thank you, Mahni. Actually, we are quite short in time, so I would like to give the last word to Fasih before we close the session. Please, Fasih.
Sir, I think there are different sectors. I mean, there's this fishing, there's industry, there's agriculture, and then there's this trade-off between these sectors and the economy, these sectors and the pollution in the marine life. So I think for now, as far as my research is done and stuff, I've seen that we are normally looking at the technical end of it. We know that, okay, if we put, let's say, fertilizers to the oceans, it has a bad effect on the sea life. If we put, let's say, other pollutants like plastics and stuff, it's going to have a bad effect. But then there's not much research on the economical side of it, the economics. I mean, there's certainly a trade-off. We're giving one thing over the other. Right now, we're only mainly focusing on, let's say, we want to boom the fishing industry, we want to boom the agriculture industry, and that's what we're trying to do. But on the other end, we're losing a lot from, let's say, the marine life and the ecosystem. So do you think the research, the economics, let's say the research on the economics end is very important over here, particularly for making policies?
You are absolutely right. This is very critical. And generally putting a value to an ecosystem is not that easy. But there are ways. There are ways to that. And the value of the ocean ecosystem or land ecosystem is not only what comes onto our plate or the energy that we use from the ocean, but for example, how do you give a value to the air that we breathe? I mean, as I have said, even sitting in Kayseri, most of the air that you breathe, most of the oxygen in the air that you breathe comes from the sea. How do you give it a value? That's not easy, as you say. But I can easily say that a healthy ecosystem, a healthy economy requires a healthy ecosystem. I mean, one doesn't exist without the other one. If you are polluting the ocean with using the plastics today, that will come back and bite you for sure. So we are showing that at least. I mean, maybe we can't today show the value of the oxygen that we breathe in terms of money, but we can show carbon sequestration, for example, the carbon that the seas and oceans absorb, the carbon dioxide, because there is a value to it. Or the economical benefits that we get from the ecosystem. We call them ecosystem services. We are trying to show the value of the ecosystem services today. And there are different ecosystem services, and some of them are recreation, there is health, and we are putting them on the paper as a monetary value, and trying to show the policymakers, the politicians, that this is the value. And if you adapt these sustainable development goals, this is where you will be. So today, economically, you are here, tomorrow you can be there. So these will also help you grow economically. So yes, we need to show that, and we are trying hard to show this, but there are certain services that we cannot give a value to as well.
Thank you, Hocam. Now that the time is 5:35, we have to stop, but I must confess that I really enjoyed this conversation, and I really would like to continue it sometime in the future as well. Thank you, Professor Barış Salihoğlu. Thank you, Mahnin, Sinan, Sayed, Ribal, and Fasih. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. So, do you have any last words before we close?
Thanks again. Thank you all, both for the invitation and for this great discussion. And please follow us on social media, and don't hesitate to contact us and contribute, because obviously you have great ideas. And we would like to also get more insight from you and our young student friends. I mean, really the questions were great. The interest was, I was very happy with the interest that you have shown. And I again thank you for this invitation.
You're more than welcome. We thank you.
Thank you so
Said,
much,
I think you were going to say something?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ajahn.
Okay, then let's close the session. I wish you have a nice evening. Have a nice end of year. See you sometime in the future. Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.